The Claymore is a weapon of the Greatsword weapon class and can be found in Demon Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy and Elden Ring. It is often found extremely early into the game, such as Undead Burg for Dark Souls, High Wall of Lothric for Dark Souls 3 or Castle Morn for Elden Ring. This make the Claymore the de facto tutorial weapon for the Greatsword weapon class. But why? Answer. The player will often start with a fast one-handed weapon like a dagger, a straight sword, a hammer, or an axe, so putting the Claymore so early allow the player to easily find it, give it a try and get used to a slower-paced playstyle. The weapon obviously referenced the classic Scottish style of swords of the same name, which is simple in appearance and also clever since Claymore is the Gaelic word for greatsword. The sword never had any history of its own, it has never been attached to any character in lore or any NPC in-game. It is the default tutorial greatsword of the game and will usually be outclassed by other mid-game greatswords. But its simplicity and early to mid-game reliability allowed it to maintain a reputation as a fan favorite throughout the years. Taking a similar example from another country, the Flamberge is also a greatsword found in Demon Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy as well as Elden Ring, although it was slightly less consistent than its Scottish counterpart. The weapon remained mostly the same with the same shape and appearance except for Dark Souls 1 where it decided to try something new for whatever reason. In every single game, the description makes sure to precise how the shape of the blade is reminiscent of a flame, which is what allow the sword to cause bleeding. In Elden Ring in particular, it is said that fire is particularly efficient against scarlet rot, and that this type of sword eventually became the symbol of Redmane Castle as well as the favorite weapon of witch hunter Jaren, obviously referencing how women accused of witchcraft were executed during the Middle Age. But in Dark Souls 1, the weapon had a wildly different appearance and nothing in its description mentioned fire in any way, only that the shape this time referenced the serpent men of Sen's fortress. Apart from this, the weapon was always known for being a great sword with innate bleed build-up in every single game, at the cost of a slightly lower base attack than most great swords. It takes its origin in French history this time. The Flamberge is not a type of sword, but a type of blade found mainly on 3 weapons. 1. The kris, an oriental dagger. 2. The rapier, although the point of the blade here was more to impress rather than intimidate or gain an advantage in combat. And 3, of course, the German Zweihander, whose name is German for 2 hands, which is the version used in game. We can also note that the fire analogy was not invented by the Soul series, as the name Flamberge itself is also derived from the French word for fire. In other news, I just realized I just talked about a Scottish sword and a French sword, on top of being allies, are also both very passionate when it comes to hating England. And I intend to keep going on that vibe by talking about a German sword now. The Zweihander. As said in an older video, the Zweihander was technically in Demon Souls but had a different name, the Great Sword, but the root of what this sword is supposed to be were already present. It's an ultra-great sword found relatively early in the game. In fact, it was one of the 2 only weapons of that class with the Dragon Bone Smasher. Its objective was an exaggerated version of what the Claymore is supposed to be. Somewhat of an early tutorial to teach you how to use the slowest types of weapon in the game and get you used to it. It is simple, but effective. Following in its footsteps, the now named Zweihander of Dark Souls 1 was found immediately after finishing the Northern Undead Asylum, by simply going left in the cemetery, grabbing it from the grave at the end and coming back without dying to the overleveled skeletons. This was by far the most popular version of the weapon due to how easy it is to get it early and how much power it gives the player so soon into the game. The popular use of the weapon was, of course, the legendary Giant Dad meme build where you put most of your points into endurance to have a huge equip load. Combine that with the Ring of Favor and Protection which boost HP, equip load and stamina by 20% each, as well as Havel's Ring for 50% more equip load, as well as the Mask of the Father for 5% more equip load for good measure. After that you would equip the Giant's armor to gain a lot of poise and enjoy a nearly unstoppable build with fast rolls. Also you would infuse the weapon with chaos so that it gained fire damages scaling on your humanity instead of any of your normal attributes. So yes, a very popular weapon, even with a more casual way to use it without a precise build was still fun. Unfortunately, the way the games accelerated over time, especially after Bloodborne came out, meant this build wasn't popular anymore since anyone could get a lot of poise and fast rolls without as much investment. But the weapon itself also remained consistent, often the first ultra greatsword you can find, often very good in early to mid-game but always outclassed later on, by other, heavier ultra greatswords. Historically, Zweihander swords developed from the long swords of the late Middle Age and became the hallmark weapon of the German mercenary. These swords represent the final stage in the trend of increasing size that started in the 14th century. In its developed form, the Zweihander acquired the characteristics of a polearm rather than a sword due to their large size and weight, and therefore increased range and striking power. Consequently, it was not carried in a sheath but across the shoulder, just like a halberd. The claymore, the flamberge and the Zweihander aren't just generic swords made to fill out the roster of weapons in a game, they take direct inspiration from iconic weapons of great cultural importance, who all existed in real life in Scotland, France and Germany respectively. Their consistency, design and application showed just how to adapt real-life history into a video game without creating plot holes or incoherences with the inner lore of this fictional world whilst making for a very fun weapon to use at the same time.